It started small, the kind of things you brush off as forgetfulness. My coffee cup left on the nightstand would mysteriously reappear in the sink. A light I swore I'd turned off, now glowing faintly from the living room. I live alone, you see, always have. So the quiet in my house has always been a comfort, a blanket of solitude. But lately that quiet feels watched. It's not just misplaced items anymore. Last night, I heard footsteps above me, distinct and heavy, when I was sitting right here on the couch, the only person home. My home isn't empty anymore, and I have no idea who or what is sharing it with me. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked up as the thudding above me ceased. The silence that followed wasn't comforting, it was expectant, heavy. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum in the sudden absolute stillness. I remember slowly pushing myself off the couch, my limbs stiff and uncooperative. I had to see, had to know. Each step up the staircase felt like an immense effort, my breath catching in my throat with every creak of the old wood. The upstairs hallway was dark, the bedroom doors ajar, just as I'd left them. Nothing seemed disturbed. No window was open, no floorboard out of place. Just the oppressive quiet, now tinged with a cold dread that clung to the air like a shroud. I spent the rest of the night on the couch, wide awake, clutching a kitchen knife I'd grabbed on my way back down. Every shadow seemed to writhe, every mundane house sound, the refrigerator humming, the pipes groaning, was amplified into something sinister. I told myself it was my imagination, a trick of the mind fueled by stress and lack of sleep. But the next morning, that flimsy excuse shattered. I walked into my bathroom, still half asleep, and saw it. My toothbrush. It wasn't in its usual spot in the holder. It was lying flat on the sink counter, perfectly centered, facing the mirror. And next to it, meticulously folded, was a small, clean hand towel that I never used, one I kept tucked away in a drawer. It was like someone had prepared for my morning routine, or perhaps was observing it. A cold shiver ran down my spine, far more potent than the fear of footsteps. This was personal. This was deliberate. I checked all the windows again, every lock. Nothing. Not a single sign of forced entry. It was as if whatever was here was already in, or had always been. The thought made my stomach churn. I started leaving my bedroom light on at night, and sometimes I'd find myself staring at the closed door, convinced I could feel eyes on me from the other side. My appetite vanished. My once comfortable home now felt like a cage, shrinking around me. I started talking to myself, whispering denials, trying to convince myself I was just paranoid. But then, yesterday, something happened that made denial impossible. I came home from work, exhausted and on edge, and noticed something new. On my bedside table, right next to where I usually place my phone, was a single, perfectly white feather. It wasn't there when I left. I don't own any birds. My windows were closed. It was pristine, almost glowing against the dark wood. I picked it up, my fingers trembling, and felt a wave of nausea. It was too perfect, too out of place. It felt like a message, a calling card. And suddenly, the quiet wasn't just watched anymore. It was waiting. I stared at it for what felt like an eternity, the pristine white against the dark wood of my nightstand. It wasn't just a feather. It was a challenge, a question mark, a declaration. My hand, still trembling, didn't drop it. Instead, I clutched it, the soft barbs tickling my palm. I spent the night pacing, the feather still in my grasp, every creak and groan of the house now a potential answer to its silent query. Sleep was impossible. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, anything to dispel the cold certainty that had settled in my bones. But there was none. No birds, no open windows, no rational way for it to be there. It felt like a line had been crossed, a boundary erased. The next day was a blur of frantic internet searches. Ghost stories, poltergeists, home invasions, squatters. None of it fit perfectly, yet all of it grazed the edges of my new reality. I considered calling the police, but what would I say? "Officer, there's a feather on my nightstand and my toothbrush was moved?" They'd think I was insane. I was starting to think I was insane. My reflection in the mirror showed a stranger. Hollow eyes, pale skin, hair disheveled. The house, once my sanctuary, now felt like a stage, and I the unwilling performer. That evening, driven by a desperate, foolish need for answers, I did something I knew was reckless. I spoke. My voice was a shaky whisper in the oppressive quiet. "Who's there?" I asked, my gaze sweeping the empty room, half expecting a shadow to detach itself from the wall. Nothing. Just the hum of the refrigerator, a distant car. I tried again, a little louder. "What do you want?" Still nothing. A cold wave of despair washed over me. I was alone, truly alone, talking to an empty house. But I wasn't. I went to bed, leaving the feather on my nightstand, a silent dare. I must have drifted off, because I woke with a jolt, not to a sound, but to a feeling. A subtle shift in the air, a presence. My eyes snapped open. The room was dark, but a faint, almost imperceptible glow emanated from my nightstand. I squinted, my heart thudding. The feather was gone. In its place, perfectly centered, was a small, ornate silver locket. It wasn't mine. I had never seen it before. It looked old, antique, and incredibly delicate. My breath hitched. This wasn't just moving things anymore. This was a gift, a response. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and opened it. Inside, nestled against the velvet lining, was a single, tiny, dried rose petal, and beneath it, etched into the silver, a single word: mine. The word mine wasn't a whisper in the dark, it was a scream in my soul. My fingers, still trembling, traced the delicate etching. It wasn't a threat, not exactly, but a claim. A possessive, chilling declaration that solidified every fear I'd been fighting. This wasn't some random prankster, some confused squatter. This was something that understood ownership, that had chosen me, or perhaps my home. The rose petal, so fragile and dead, suddenly felt profoundly significant. A memento of what? Of whom? My own breath hitched in my throat, a ragged sound in the suffocating silence. I snapped the locket shut, the tiny click echoing like a gunshot. My eyes darted around the room, frantically searching the shadows, the corners, the closed door. Every fiber of my being screamed to run, to flee this house that was no longer mine. But where would I go? It felt like it was already everywhere. The air in the room felt thick, heavy with an unseen presence pressing down on me. I could almost feel its gaze, a cold, unwavering scrutiny that burrowed deep into my mind. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat up in bed, the locket clutched tight in my hand, my back pressed against the headboard, watching the door. The feather had been a message. This was a response, a terrifying, intimate exchange. My earlier whispers of "who's there" and "what do you want" had been answered, not with words, but with an object, a symbol. It wanted me to know it was here. It wanted me to know I was seen. The hours crawled by, each minute an eternity of tense anticipation. The house was silent, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not empty, not just watched, but occupied. Co-inhabited. I started to notice things I hadn't before. The way the shadows shifted, not just from outside light, but as if something moved within them. A faint, almost imperceptible scent in the air, like old dried flowers, and something else, something metallic and cold. My skin prickled constantly. I felt like prey. When the first rays of dawn finally pierced through the blinds, casting weak, pale light into the room, I didn't feel relief, only a weary dread. The locket was still in my hand, a tangible link to the impossible. I couldn't just throw it away. It felt like that would be an invitation. I had to understand. I had to know what mine truly meant. And as I slowly got out of bed, my legs stiff, my mind a jumble of terror and desperate curiosity, I knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. The rules of my world had irrevocably changed. I couldn't just sit there. The locket was a question, an answer, and a torment. My fingers, still numb with fear, traced the delicate silver, the single word, mine, burning into my mind. I had to know. Slowly, carefully, I tried to open it again, to examine the dried rose petal that felt so significant. As my fingernails slipped under the clasp, a faint whisper slithered through the quiet room. It wasn't a voice, not exactly, more like the rustle of old silk or dried leaves skittering across a forgotten floor. But it was there, and it was getting closer. The air grew colder, heavy and sweet with that familiar scent of decaying flowers, now tinged with something cloying, something rotten. My breath hitched, my heart hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs. I felt a pressure against my back, as if something incredibly tall and thin was standing directly behind me, even though I knew nothing was there. The shadows in the room deepened, twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed to writhe and reach. I squeezed my eyes shut, clutching the locket so tightly my knuckles ached, a silent plea for it to just disappear. But it didn't. Then a cold, dry touch brushed against my bare arm. Not a physical touch, not really, but a sensation, like a spider crawling over my skin, raising goosebumps in its wake. My eyes flew open. The room was no longer just dark. It was swallowed by an unholy blackness, deeper than any night. Yet I could still perceive the outlines of my furniture, distorted, elongated. And then I saw it, or felt it. A shadow not cast by light, but a void in the air itself, coalescing in front of me. It was tall, impossibly thin, and silent. Yet I could hear it, not with my ears, but directly in my mind. A voice like brittle glass shattering, like ancient dust whispering through forgotten halls. And it spoke. Not in English, not in any language I knew, but the meaning was terrifyingly clear. It was a single word, echoing in the cavern of my skull, a word that stripped away my sanity, my identity, everything I thought I was. Mine. And then it wasn't just a word, it was a feeling. A cold, possessive tendril snaking into my chest, wrapping around my very soul. I felt myself being pulled, drawn into the encroaching void, my own will dissolving. My home wasn't empty, it was full, and I was no longer the occupant. I was the object. I was the collection. I was mine. The word still echoes, a constant hum beneath my thoughts. Mine. It wasn't a question, it was an answer, carved into the very fiber of my being. I am here, within these walls, but not as I once was. My memories are like scattered rose petals, fading, crumbling, each one a relic of a self that no longer truly exists. The house isn't empty, no, it's full, full of quiet whispers, of things collected and cherished, and I am one of them. I feel the presence now, not as a threat, but as an extension of myself, or perhaps I am an extension of it. The boundaries blurred long ago, the lines between us dissolved into a singular, chilling truth. The cold, dry touch is a constant now, a quiet reassurance of belonging. The locket rests nearby, a cold weight, a symbol of this new ownership, this terrifying intimacy. I am watched, yes, but also held, part of a vast silent collection that grows with each passing shadow. My old fears, my old desires, they feel distant now, like dreams from another life. This quiet, this profound, possessive quiet is all that remains. Sometimes, in the deepest stillness, I wonder if others have felt this slow, insidious claiming of what they thought was theirs. Have you ever woken up and felt a part of you was missing, or worse, replaced? Because once it takes hold, you realize you were never truly yours to begin with.